Kessler Edwards, and this is a guy a lot of people don't know about, but you do, John. Can you give us a little rundown of this guy the Kings acquired from Brooklyn?
Yeah, so I just got back from lunch with Kessler. I call him Kess. No, I'm just kidding. Kessler Edwards. One of the things that's really interesting about Kessler Edwards, and I didn't know this until I did a little bit more research. Did not have the opportunity to do it because we were recording like within the hour of that deal going down. But one of the things that's really interesting about Kessler Edwards is that in his rookie season, he was thrusted into the rotation because there were so many health and safety protocols that the Nets just didn't have any bodies, and so they needed bodies. And Kessler Edwards was next man up. And he just performed well given the opportunity, playing defense and shooting threes. I think someone who covers the Brooklyn Nets called him Brooklyn's rookie stopper. Like they were really high on this guy's defense. And apparently Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox were as well. They had apparently had their eyes on Edwards since Edwards was playing at Pepperdine, which makes sense. He's got the kind of physical skill set, 6'7", 6'11" wingspan, athletic, plays defense, runs the floor, can shoot the three. That's the exact type of guy you want to throw into a core potentially. And this year, he didn't quite make the rotation, played mostly in the G League, was kind of bouncing up in terms of minutes. His minutes were kind of bouncing around at the NBA level. And without that consistency, you didn't really see him shooting the ball super well. And he shot really well in the G League. He shot 40%, I think, in 14 games for the Long Island Nets. I think there's something to say that if this guy just can stay in one place. I know that Adrian Wojnarowski reported that the Kings intend to use him in Stockton. But, I mean, the Kings, you heard Mike Brown say it, the game that Keon Ellis played. And Brendan Nunez asked him, like, you're always talking about looking for combinations out there in the rotation and whatnot, and kind of centering in on the defense. Mike Brown was like, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of looking for somebody that has a little more consistency, especially on the defensive end of the floor. He's just looking for somebody that can stay in front of the basketball and not have too many mental errors. Now, can Kessler Edwards be that guy? I don't know, but he gives him a chance. He's kind of done it in the NBA. In a lot of ways, there was a kind of an interest in PJ Dozier because he'd kind of been a contributor on a winning team with the Nuggets prior to getting hurt. And so there was like promise here. Well, Kessler Edwards just kind of fell out. Like, just give him another chance. He didn't get hurt or anything. He didn't have a ACL reconstruction or anything like that. Like, this guy could do something. Will he? I don't know. But you didn't trade anything to get this guy. And, if he pays off, like I said earlier, that's a great trade. And then I guess one point that's interesting, because the defense seems like it's pretty much there for the most part. It wasn't perfect his rookie year. I'm sure there's been improvements. But the three-point shot's interesting because coming out of college, he had like a weird lower half kind of thing that they adjusted when he came to the NBA. I guess they described it as an unorthodox motion in his lower half that they fixed. And for like that first section of that rookie season with the Nets, he was shooting like over 40%. And he closed the season not shooting the same. So I don't know how much I believe in his three-point shot. I mean, he shot pretty well with the G League at about 40%. So it's potential, it could be there, but he seems kind of like it's up and down shooter, not really so much like awesome, but I would say way more reliable than like KZ Akpala and way more NBA experience than Keon Ellis at this point. I don't know if Kessler Edwards would be a nightly rotation guy this season. I don't know if the numbers really allow for that when you're talking about a rotation of 8 or 9 guys. But can Kessler Edwards be that guy that, you kind of saw KZ Akpala in December, you saw Keon Ellis for a second there, Mike Brown at least went to him, where the perimeter defense is really bad. And sometimes Brown just goes to somebody. And maybe it's just for 5 minutes in that one quarter or whatever. Or maybe that guy ends up earning more minutes. Kessler Edwards kind of gives you that option. Obviously, you don't know anything about Kessler Edwards. You don't trade anything for him, really. You can without knowing anything about Kessler Edwards, you can like the idea that this is kind of a low-risk, high-reward trade. But kind of learning more about him, it's like, this guy's really got a chance. If we thought PJ Dozier had a chance, this guy's got an even better chance. And he's filling that roster spot, so he's going to be here for the year, I think. And I think there's got to be a lot of credit given to that move on Monty McNair's part.
I think you said it perfectly, and I was thinking the same thing. It's low risk, high reward. You get this guy for virtually nothing, and he's a guy who fits what the Kings are trying to build around. Just 100% low risk, high reward. And you said it again, like he kind of reminds me of KZ Akpala, or it's like he's a good comparison. Like going into this year, it's like KZ Akpala, great defender. I think Mike Brown went as far as to say he could be a defensive player of the year candidate.
I wish I had Mike Brown to talk my confidence up, man.
I know. And so, I mean, we saw it. I mean, we didn't see, I don't know, defensive player of the year defensive ability from Akpala, but he was, you could argue he's one of the better defenders on the team, but his offense was just that bad. So, again, I guess Edwards kind of like a blank slate kind of guy. Like, okay, like maybe he can become something. Maybe the Kings can develop him the correct way and get him to his potential in this league.
No, absolutely. And I think just kind of centering on that KZ Akpala thing, it's like we saw stretches where KZ Akpala looked decent, where he provides that defense, kind of has some good awareness of where he needs to be on the floor in terms of spacing and movement. And then like there were moments where I think there was like kind of a stretch there where he was hitting kind of some open threes. And it's like, oh man, all right, there you go, Akpala, like great. But then it's just like, well, he's still kind of a project. And maybe Kessler Edwards is still a project, but he's better. If you're ranking the players on this roster, I would say he's better than KZ Akpala. I think that if anybody, you do cursory research on Kessler Edwards, that's the way it is. I don't remember KZ Akpala ever having a rotational job in the NBA. In his time with Miami, he got some spot starts here and there. He's never a rotational guy.
No.
So that's a slight improvement. And then that ceiling can only go up, really. Because I don't see Kessler Edwards just like falling off the wagon. I don't see that happening at all. And, a California guy, I think there's something to say about, KZ Akpala is as well, both from Southern California, but I don't know. Kessler Edwards just seems like a swell fella. Went to the same school as Doug Christie, as everybody notes, rightfully so. I really think that trade was like a solid A- in my opinion. People are like, that's so stupid. But it's just like, it comes down to you're not going to ever get hurt by that deal. That deal's never going to come back and bite you in the butt. David Michino's not going to all of a sudden break into the NBA somehow because the Nets have his draft rights. But can Kessler Edwards be a guy that's like, will we be talking about him next year? It's like, how many minutes, is Kessler Edwards going to be getting this year, kind of talking like that, and where he's really putting himself in the conversation. Like, that's very believable. And that's a hell of a trade, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see if he even gets any minutes this year. Kings obviously have made a couple acquisitions and some 10-day pickups, and PJ Dozier and the other guy. Who was it? Burton? I don't even remember.
Deonte Burton. And they got very little playing time, mostly in garbage time. So Kessler Edwards seems more of a guy who could get minutes over these guys, maybe not in garbage time, just for what he offers defensively. And, he can shoot the ball well enough to see the floor and not be too much of a liability. It's an interesting pickup. Hopefully just one that pays off. And maybe it won't pay off this year, but yeah, it could very well in the future. So definition of low risk, high reward. And it could be low risk, no reward, but at the same time, you got this guy for David, Michino? Michino, yeah.
Michino. Yeah.
Like if you look at him, I think he's like 28 years old. I think he's playing in another country right now.
I've never even heard of him. I didn't even know we traded for him until you said that.
That was like the last. They're like, more details to come. Because it's just like, well, what did they get?
David Michino. Yeah. Let me hype this guy up. He looks French, just based off his name.
He is French, and I think he's playing in Italy, actually.
He is. He's on Napoli Basket. His international stats, just to show you what the Kings traded away, he's averaging a solid 11.2 points, 4.1 assists, and 3.6 rebounds.
I want to know how many guys that are just going to play their whole career in Europe have draft rights held by a team. It's like, I'm waiting for them to want to negotiate that contract.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to give me a call.
And what does Edwards play? He plays a small forward. Can he slide down to the power forward at 6'8"? Or is
not really? He's like 215 pounds.
Oh, okay. So no.
But if you really have to think about it, like the Kings are really looking at perimeter defense and just getting that length out there. Edwards has a lot to offer.
Yes, that perimeter defense. Ugh.
It can cause so many issues. You get a breakdown on the perimeter, and it's a breakdown everywhere.
Yep.